Tonight is not like the other nights. You felt that before this video even started. Something in you paused. Something in you knew. Maybe you tried to scroll past. Maybe you told yourself you were tired, done, over it, ready to move on. But here you are, still listening, and that is not an accident. Because there is something you need to hear right now, not next week, not after one more sign, not after one more cold silence that makes you question your own heart. Right now. Someone you have tried so hard to forget has not forgotten you. Someone you told yourself was distant, closed, unreachable, is carrying more than you can see. And if you leave this message too early, you may miss the one sentence your soul has been waiting for. So stay with me. Really stay. Do not half listen to this. Do not let this play in the background while your mind wanders somewhere safer. This message is for the part of you that still feels them at strange hours, still hears their absence like a sound, still knows there is something unfinished here. In the next few minutes, pieces are going to click into place. Things that confused you will start to make sense. And by the end, you may understand why this connection has refused to die. If you are here, you were meant to be here. Take a breath, slow down, let yourself arrive fully, because what is coming next may explain the silence in a way nothing else ever has. I have seen people carry pain they could not explain. I have watched them protect it, deny it, dress it up as logic, call it timing, pride, bad luck, or simple misunderstanding. I have seen people walk around the truth for years before they finally had the courage to stand still and let it touch them. So when I tell you this, I do not say it lightly. There is a kind of love that does not ask for permission before it enters your life. It does not arrive politely. It does not wait until you are ready. It does not care about the plan you made, the walls you built, or the neat little future you thought you were going to have. It comes in like weather, fast, quiet, total. By the time you notice it, it is already inside everything, not just your thoughts, your body, your breath, your sleep, your focus, your sense of time. You look at one person and something older than reason wakes up, not because they checked every box, not because the story made sense, but because something deep inside you recognized something deep inside them, and once that recognition happens, life does not return to normal. It cannot. You already know the kind of connection I mean. I think you knew from the first line. There is probably a name rising in your chest right now. Do not push it away. Just let it be there for a moment. Because the truth is, they have been feeling this too. Even if their actions have been smaller than their feelings, even if their silence has been louder than any words they almost sent. They think of you at the wrong times. That is the first thing you need to know. Not the times they would choose if they wanted to stay in control, but the hours that choose them. The late night moments when the noise drops and the day can no longer protect them. The quiet drive, the shower. The ordinary afternoon when nothing dramatic happens, and still your presence moves through their mind like a wave that does not ask permission. They have started messages they never sent. More than once, more than they would admit. Words have been typed, erased, typed again, softened, shortened, hidden, abandoned, not because they do not care, because they care so much that the caring itself became heavy. That is what you must understand. Indifference is clean, it moves on, it sleeps, it forgets. This is not that. This is the opposite. This is feeling so much that it creates paralysis. This is wanting to reach and then freezing at the edge because reaching would make everything real. They have spoken your name when you were not there. Not always out loud, sometimes only in that private room inside themselves where the truest things live. They have tried to keep living as if distance solved something, as if stepping back made the connection smaller, as if routine could replace what happened. But it has cost them, more than they expected, more than they planned for. The distance looked easier from the outside than it feels from the inside, and now the weight of maintaining that distance is becoming harder for them to carry. Stay with me here, because this next part matters. The silence did not mean the feeling disappeared. In many ways, the silence was what the feeling turned into when it became too strong to handle directly. There was a moment when everything almost changed. Maybe you remember it already. Most people do. A specific night, a certain conversation, a look that lasted a second too long, a pause that felt full, dangerous, alive. It looked like an ordinary moment to anyone else, but to you it was not ordinary at all. The air changed. The room changed. Something real moved close enough to be spoken. They felt it too. That is important. Do not rewrite that memory and make yourself the only one who noticed. They were there with you in it. They were closer to honesty in that moment than they had ever been before. Maybe it was in the way they looked at you. Maybe it was in the strange softness that came over them for one brief second. Maybe it was in the sentence they almost said, and then replaced with something safer, smaller, easier to survive. That is the part that still lives in you. Not only what happened, but what almost happened. And those almost moments stay because the body remembers what the mouth did not say. You felt the door close, even if the conversation kept moving, even if the evening kept pretending to be normal. That is why certain memories refuse to fade. It is not nostalgia. It is unfinished energy. It is truth stopping just short of becoming visible. And somewhere on their side, that same night still lives. Different details maybe, different pain maybe, but it lives. If there has ever been a moment like that between you and this person, then you already know how powerful an unsaid thing can become. And if you are tempted to leave this video now, do not, because the next part is the message hidden inside their silence, the one they have not been able to say cleanly, directly, or all the way through. If they could speak without fear for just one honest minute, this is what would come out. I do not know how to begin with you because the feeling itself was never small, and every beginning I tried sounded too weak for what this really is. I have been trying for so long that the trying became part of my daily life. I wake up in it. I distract myself inside it. I reach for my phone and stop. I build the sentence and then tear it down. I tell myself tomorrow. I tell myself later. I tell myself I need the perfect words, the safe moment, the right sign. But the truth is simpler and harder than that. Meeting you changed something in me that I had no system for. I had a version of myself that worked, a version that fit the rooms I was in, a version that knew how to function, how to stay measured, how to move through life without shaking too much. I was not fake, I was just contained. Then you appeared, and suddenly contained was not enough. Something in me recognized something in you and adjusted before my mind could object. It was not a decision, it was not a plan. It was like a compass finding north, automatic, immediate, quiet, but final. And because of that I have been split ever since between the life I know how to maintain and the truth I do not know how to manage. That is why the silence happened. Not because you meant little, because you meant too much. Because once I admit what this is, I cannot go back to pretending it is ordinary. And part of me has been terrified of what my life would ask of me if I told the full truth. There is another thing you need to hear, and hear clearly. You were never crazy for feeling this. You were never weak because it stayed with you. You were never foolish because logic could not erase it. What you have been carrying has weight, real weight, not fantasy, not boredom, not projection built out of loneliness. Real emotional weight. That is why it has followed you across seasons, across routines, across all the very practical things you did to keep functioning. You went to work. You answered messages. You handled responsibilities. You smiled in the right places. You kept your life moving. And still this connection sat in your chest like something solid. That is not because you failed to let go. It is because some experiences do not leave when we command them to. Some truths stay because they are attached to a part of us deeper than preference. You have been calling this waiting, but that is not the whole story. You have been calling it heartbreak, attachment, unfinished business, maybe even weakness on the hard days. But what if some part of what you have been living is not just pain? What if it is transformation, wearing the face of pain, because growth rarely arrives in a form the ego enjoys? Think about who you were before this connection. Think about how carefully you loved, how edited you were, how much you needed certainty before you let yourself feel fully. Then look at who you became after. More honest, more open, more aware of what is real and what is merely acceptable. More alive, even in the ache. That matters. Do not skip past that. Because a connection can hurt you and still wake you up. It can leave you without answers and still introduce you to a larger version of yourself. You cannot return to the person you were before this. That version of you is gone, and not because you were damaged, because something in you expanded. Rooms inside you opened that had been locked for years. Desires became clearer. Standards changed. Your heart learned the difference between something that simply works and something that is deeply true. Before this, maybe you could live in half-light and call it enough. You could settle for what looked stable, sounded reasonable, passed for love in the ordinary world. But once you have felt a bond that reaches beyond convenience, beyond surface chemistry, beyond neat explanations, The old forms stop fitting. That can feel like suffering. It can feel like loss. It can feel like being stranded between worlds, unable to go back and not yet able to move fully forward. But there is another way to see it. You are not only mourning a person, you are adjusting to a wider self. This connection made you braver than you realize. It made you face your own capacity. It showed you that you can feel at full volume and remain standing. It showed you where you were shrinking, where you were translating other people's fear into a judgment about your worth, where you are asking for permission to be the deeper version of yourself. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, you stopped doing that. You began to understand that someone else's inconsistency does not define your value. Their distance does not reduce your depth. Their fear does not cancel your knowing. Keep listening, because this is where many people click away. And if you stay, the whole shape of this experience may change. What if the reason this bond stayed was not only to bring someone back, but to bring you back to yourself in a way nothing smaller ever could? There is a precise wound that certain connections touch, not to destroy you, to reveal you. Sometimes one person arrives carrying the exact mirror your soul can no longer avoid. Not a gentle mirror, a sharp one, clear, unforgiving, exact. They reflect the part of you that has been waiting to be seen, claimed, and lived without apology. That is why the bond feels almost unbearable at times. It is not just about longing for them. It is about being confronted by your own depth, your own hunger, your own ability to love without hiding. The wound does not heal by removing the mirror. You can delete numbers, block accounts, change cities, fill your schedule, start over, and still, if the mirror showed you something true, that truth remains. Healing comes when you stop asking only, will they return, and start asking, what did this connection reveal in me that I am now responsible for living? That question changes everything, because then the power begins to move back into your hands. Then the story is no longer only about being chosen, contacted, or claimed by someone else. It becomes about whether you will claim the self this love called forward, the self that knows the difference between real and almost, the self that cannot go back to sleep now that it has been awake this long, the self that no longer wants edited love, partial presence, or emotionally careful arrangements, pretending to be enough. And yes, maybe this person still has a role in the story. Maybe the wall they built is beginning to crack. Maybe the life they constructed to avoid the full truth is becoming harder to maintain. But even before that changes, something else is already happening. You are being asked to stand inside your own truth, with the same honesty you once waited to receive from them. There have been signs, and you know it. Not every day, not all the time, but on certain days, when something shifted inside you, when the connection suddenly felt near, when the silence somehow felt charged instead of empty, little patterns started showing up. Numbers, songs, phrases, sudden memories arriving out of nowhere, moments that felt too timed to dismiss completely. You do not need to force meaning into every detail, but you also do not need to insult your own intuition by pretending none of it ever touched you. Some signs arrive not to predict an ending, but to steady you in the middle, to remind you that invisible things can still be real, to remind you that what was built inside you is not temporary simply because it is unseen. When a number repeats, when a song lands too perfectly, when you feel them without warning in the middle of an ordinary day, let it slow you down for 1 second. Let it remind you that distance and invisibility are not the same thing. There is work happening below the surface that you cannot measure with proof. And no, that does not mean you stop living your life. It means you stop using outer silence as the only tool for reading inner truth. That is where so many people lose themselves. They assume that if nothing visible is happening, nothing real is happening. But some of the biggest changes begin privately, quietly, without announcement, inside the person who has been resisting, inside the heart that thought it could outlast the feeling by staying busy. If this is resonating, stay until the end, because the final part matters most. The point is not to make you wait harder. The point is to help you understand what the waiting has already built in you, and why that matters, whether this story returns in the form you imagined or in a form you have not yet seen. Let me say this directly to the version of you that has been exhausted by carrying what no one else fully sees. You have done more than survive this. You have kept your tenderness without turning it into performance. You have held a truth without forcing it into something smaller, just because the world around you had no clean language for it. That is rare. Many people feel deeply for a moment, then betray the depth to make life easier. They rename it, shrink it, laugh it off, replace it too quickly, turn it into irony, use detachment as a costume. But you did not. You stayed with what was real, even when it hurt, even when it confused you, even when no immediate reward came from staying honest. That matters. It says something about your soul. It says something about your precision, your sensitivity, your ability to know before knowing becomes comfortable. And maybe that gift has felt more like a burden lately. Maybe you are tired of being the one who sensed it first, held it longest, understood it without being able to prove it. But do not mistake your sensitivity for error. The ones who carry the most are often the ones who felt most accurately. They noticed what others were still trying to avoid. They registered the truth before the truth was easy to admit. And that early knowing can feel lonely. It can feel unfair. It can make you question yourself. But it does not automatically make you wrong. If anything, it may mean you were strong enough to perceive what another person was still too frightened to face. And if they are beginning to feel the cost now, beginning quietly to understand what the distance has taken from them, it is not because your heart invented the connection. It is because reality is catching up to what your heart already knew. Maybe this story ends the way you once pictured. Maybe the message comes. Maybe the wall breaks. Maybe the almost finally becomes the spoken truth. Maybe one day the silence opens and what has been circling for so long arrives clearly, simply, without disguise. That can happen. And if it does, it will not be because you begged life to prove you right. It will be because something real reached the point where it could no longer remain hidden. But there is another possibility too, and I want you strong enough to hear it. The story may change shape. It may complete itself in a form you do not currently know how to imagine. And if that happens, it does not erase what was real. It does not make the bond fake. It does not cancel what opened in you. Real love does not become unreal just because it does not follow the script the mind prefers. What is real leaves evidence in who you become. Look at yourself. Your heart may be tired, but it is larger. Your vision may be blurred by emotion sometimes, but it is sharper where truth is concerned. You can no longer easily confuse attention with devotion, chemistry with depth, or comfort with destiny. That is not nothing. That is a life-level shift. This connection altered the way you move through the world. It taught you to listen inward. It taught you to respect what your body knows before the facts catch up. It taught you that love is not always safe, but it can be sacred. And once sacred things touch your life, even briefly, you do not walk away unchanged. So do not stand here measuring the entire experience only by whether a person returns in the exact form you wanted. Also measure it by what it made possible inside you, because that part is already yours, and no silence can take it back. Still, I know there is a part of you that wants the simplest answer. You want to know if they feel it. Yes, you want to know if the silence meant nothing. No, you want to know if the distance was easy for them. It was not. You want to know if what happened between you was imagined. It was not imagined, it was felt, maybe unevenly expressed, maybe poorly handled, maybe delayed, hidden, defended against, or covered in layers of ordinary behavior, but felt. And what they are dealing with now is the growing cost of pretending that what changed them did not change them. People can keep that performance alive for a while, sometimes a long while. They can fill their days, maintain appearances, repeat safe habits, but eventually the soul gets tired of helping the mask. Eventually what is true starts pressing harder against what is merely functional. That pressure may be building right now, quietly, privately, in ways nobody around them can see yet. That is why you were brought here tonight, not to freeze your life waiting for a miracle, but to release the story that their silence was proof of your unworthiness. It never was. Their silence belonged to their fear, their confusion, their structure, their unfinished inner work. It was never the final measurement of your value. And the moment you stop treating their withdrawal like a verdict on your worth, something powerful happens. The whole field changes. You become less available to confusion, less willing to shrink, less likely to betray your own knowing, just to feel temporarily safe. That shift matters more than you realize, because whether they come forward tomorrow, later, or not in the form you expect, you are not the same person who first entered this story. You are stronger now, clearer now, more whole in the very place that once felt broken. So here is the final message, and I want you to let it land without arguing with it. What you felt was real. The connection mattered. The silence did not erase it. The distance did not disprove it. The almost was not meaningless. The transformation in you was not an accident. You were not foolish for sensing what was there before anyone had the courage to name it. You were not weak for carrying it with honesty. You were not lost just because the path stayed hidden longer than you expected. You were being changed, and maybe, at the same time, so were they. This is the part where you stop asking permission to trust what your soul already knows. This is the part where you stop reducing a life-changing connection to a simple success or failure story. This is the part where you let yourself be the person this love called forward, with or without immediate resolution. If something in you knows, let that knowing breathe tonight. Let it stand outside the prison of self-doubt for once. And if this message found you at the exact moment you needed it, do not ignore that either. Some things arrive right on time, even when the journey to them felt late. Stay open, stay grounded, keep your life moving, but do not betray the truth to make it easier to explain. The heart knows what the heart knows, and sometimes the rarest thing is not the connection itself, but the courage to honor it without turning away from your own becoming. If you felt this in your chest, then you already understand. And if you understand, then you also know this is not the end of the story.